No, the radio show for me is the most fun to do because it's. I lived through those decades of rock. I know all those guys.
No one has more stories. I mean,
well, I mean, I know all of them. I mean, you can just go about to the most obscure, the Seeds, and I've done shows with those guys.
Tell us about the period of time when you lived with the Pink Floyd in
L.A. That was an interesting time because we were the only people in L.A. that knew who the Pink Floyd were. They came to it. We were a band at a club called the Cheetah Club. We were sort of their
notorious LA club.
Yeah, and this band, the manager says, we got this band from England coming in called the Pink Floyd, and we went, yeah, Pink Floyd. You know, we knew exactly who they were. We knew all their songs. We knew everything. In America, nobody had ever heard of them.
Well, this was what, 68?
68. Yeah. So they came in. They ran out of money. We were living in a house that we were barely able to keep the payments up on, you know. And I said, come over and stay at our house. So now we got Alice Cooper and the Pink Floyd.
The whole band?
Yeah. And at that time they had Sid Barrett. And Sid Barrett was like, I don't know how anybody got that messed up that early, you know. Until later you found out he was bipolar, he had all kinds of problems, mental, and he also did a lot of acid, you know. So that didn't exactly help. But he'd be sitting there at the breakfast table and there'd be a box of cornflakes. And he'd be like, staring at them. And he was watching the cornflakes box.
Thought he was watching
the way I'd be watching television. You know, he'd be going. You know, I'd go, Sid. Okay, Sid's not here.
Shortly after that, he was gone forever.
Yeah, he was gone. And it was too bad because he was really a genius. I mean, he really was a genius. He did some amazing things. But the Pink Floyd, I loved what they did. Even when they had Dave Gilmour, they still really supported Sid Barrett. Oh, they knew that he was mentally gone, and they still kind of like watched out for him.
Well, he left an estate of over $1 million.
Oh yeah. Oh no, and the Pink Floyd, I guarantee you, they kept their eye on him. You know, they sent people out to make sure he didn't get too crazy.
Well, some of that Piper at the Gates of Dawn.
Great album.
Great album.
And Saucer
still
Full
stands
of
up
Secrets.
today. Yeah.
Saucer Full of Secrets. I mean, if you want to hear great, not just dumb psychedelia, but really smart psychedelia, those two albums are the best.
Yeah, it kind of took it to a new level from like where the Electric Prunes were with kind of the top 40.
Yeah, everybody had an Echoplex.
Right.
Everybody had a wah-wah pedal and a fuzz tone, and they make all these, you know, insane sounds. Pink Floyd actually made it work in the music. It was orchestrated into the music. So they really knew what they were doing. And of course, they all idolized Frank Zappa. You know, Frank Zappa was the sort of the king of all the musicians.
There's another story. The GTO is setting you up with lingerie to wear.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's all we really cared about was, you know, we thought if we were going to be Alice Cooper, then we were men enough to wear lingerie.
The GTOs were, we should tell people.
Girls together outrageously.
Just kind of a Zappa...
They looked like gypsies. They looked like gypsies, and they were all groupies.
Yeah, Zappa groupies.
But they put together some kind of a musical act, and they really were bizarre. They were really bizarre. And what we would wear, we'd wear like black leather pants. And I'd take an old ripped slip and wear it, you know, and I'd go, that looks cool. Smear some makeup on, you know, black leather gloves and a switchblade. You know, and I'd go, that's a good look. So you know, first of all, nobody's going to say, hey, you know, they're not going to call you gay because you have a switchblade.
So it was a bunch of groupies and Betty Davis that got it started.
Absolutely. You know. No, we were looking for anything to pretty much outrage, you know, the audience. We were a good band. We were really a good band. We didn't have something that was going to make us apart from anybody else until we decided just to go as far out on the limb as possible and live it. We decided we're going to be Alice Cooper. We better be able to deliver. So that's when the theatrics came in. And believe me, the press hated the theatrics, the bands hated the theatrics. There was not one person on our side on the whole theatrical bit except Frank Zappa and Groucho Marx. Those are the only two people that went.
The only two that matter.
Yeah. And after that, when we started making hit records, all of a sudden they had to accept it. Because when you have a #1 record, people have to look at you and go, okay, well, wait a minute. You know, now they're making hit records. That Alice Cooper should never have had a hit record. except that Bob Ezrin came along. We had 18, No More Mr. Nice Guy, School's Out.
Greatest rock, one of the great rock anthems ever, still today.
Well, you can't argue with that. That in that world, a hit record is like the key to the kingdom. That's what makes everybody kind of turn their head and go, "Oh, those are the guys we hated, right? Well, we like them now."
We like them now.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, you saw the theatrical band start. Then Bowie came out, T-Rex, and all those bands. T-Rex. But you really had to go out on the thin ice, though, realizing you had nobody on your side except you.
Well, actually, when you think about it, the whole glam rock scene with the platforms and the snakeskin and the mascara, that was early '70s stuff. Mata Hoople, T-Rex, and you were doing it before. Those
guys came after. We used to play in London, and David Bowie used to come to the show when he was David Jones. He wasn't David Bowie yet. All those bands came to the shows, and as soon as they saw the New York Dolls used to come to the shows in New York, and then they became the New York Dolls. And they saw it, and they realized it was really out on the far fringes, But when it worked, it worked. Mm-hmm. The audience loved it. And couple that with some hit records, and you got it.
Well, look at all the hit records that came out of the whole glam rock.
Well, the '70s made great records from Bowie made great records, and
so did Slade. Slade's another one.
Another band that was the Sweet.
The Sweet.
When you think of all those groups that came out, Thin Lizzy, was sort of in that world. Mott the Hoople, all those groups made great records.
And they hold up today.
Yeah.
That's the amazing thing.
Yeah. Well, that's why I play it. I sit there and I'll play Mott the Hoople, and I'll play stuff from T-Rex and stuff, and I get emails going, "What was that?" Mm-hmm. And I go, "That record's 35 years old, and it's still ahead of what's going on today."
I was playing that stuff when it was new. I put the Cowboy song on today.
Yeah.
And they go, "Wow, this is really a great song."
Oh, there's stuff that the Yardbirds did that Led Zeppelin can't do. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Yardbirds, when they had a record, Happenings 10 years time ago, and all their hits were always really off kilter. They, Over, Under, Sideways, Down, Shapes.
Right.
They were all different from everybody else. Those records are still more progressive than any record that's out today. So when nobody's ever caught up with them.
I don't know. I think the state of music right now is.
Well, everybody's derivative, and that's something that has to happen. I mean, at some point,
it's all recycled.
At some point, everybody's going to be a recycling of somebody else. Even we were at a point where we listened to the Who, we listened to the Yardbirds, we added a little Leonard Bernstein in there, a little West Side Story. We threw a little, James Bond in there, and we mixed all of those TV themes up in there too. We borrowed a little bit of Man from U.N.C.L.E. and put it in, and people didn't know what that was. And you add that to School's Out is basically a Yardbird song. Underneath it, it's bolero. Mm-hmm. Dun da 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 dun da 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 dun da 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 dun da 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 dun. Because that was our heroes. The Yardbirds were.
It had one of the great endings.
Yeah,
that's right. Time.
Yeah.
Remember the first time I heard that, I said, "What a great ending!"
Well, that was Bob Ezrin. Bob Ezrin was brilliant. He was our George Martin. I remember Paul Rothschild, who produced The Doors and Paul Butterfield and all those bands. He said he was driving in his car and he heard the line, "I can't even think of a word that rhymes." He says he stopped his car. He said that's one of the great lines in rock and roll of all time. And it was true. I couldn't think of a word that rhymed, so I just put it in there. But that song, you can never get another one.
Right.
Everybody gets one of those, and you try to write "School's Back In,"
or "The Power's Out,"
anything, because the Stones had "Satisfaction." That was their song. Mm-hmm. There's never going to be a bigger song than "Satisfaction" for the Stones. Now they've written better songs since then, but never. That's the one that made the mark. The Who's My Generation will always be the one that, when I think of the Who, that's the one.
Yeah.
School's Out will always be ours.
Then you have 18 too.
18 was before School's Out, so 18 kind of got in there too.